Hey guys, this is Doug with Fellowship of the Martyrs, LibertyDisasterRelief.com, also part of the ChurchOfLiberty.com. I'm doing a video, hopefully at the moment, to clear up some misunderstandings that are rampant about taxable status of different organizations and churches, and tax-exempt versus non-taxable, 501c3 corporations, and so on. I'm going to be referencing particularly the IRS tax guide for churches and religious organizations, which is form publication 1828, I think it is. Let me blow that up bigger. Publication 1828, revised 09-2006, catalog number 21096G is the publication number. It's widely available online. If you just do a search for Tax Guide for Churches and Religious Organizations, this talks about the benefits and responsibilities under the federal tax law. Now, among other accusatory videos, one of them is that we are giving tax receipts without being a 501c3 organization and therefore are somehow breaking the law. That is not the case. There are also a sister who I dearly love did a video the other day talking about how all 501c3s are from the devil, and any church that is a 501c3 has made the state their head and has incorporated themselves with the state, and if you are a 501c3 designated church, you're evil. Now, that was a real short summary of what she actually said, and there are others out there with similar arguments. Now, if somebody asks, is the Church of Liberty or Liberty Disaster Relief set up as a 501c3? I say yes, because IRS Section 501c3 is the section of the IRS code that deals with churches and charitable organizations. Every church automatically falls under IRS Section 501c3. Now, the difference is you can be an unregistered church and you're automatically non-taxable, and I'm going to show you where the IRS code says that, or you can be a corporation that incorporates with the state as a business, with the Secretary of State as your head, basically, with the permission of the state, and requests special permission to be considered a 501c3 non-taxable, tax-exempt organization. Okay, and there's a big difference between a special tax exemption that's given to you and a non-taxable status that you're automatically qualified for by virtue of saying I'm a church and meeting certain criteria of that. Now, on page 23 of this document, it defines church and IRS, a minister, IRS Section 501c3, and this is what it says. IRS Section 501c3. IRS Section 501c3 describes charitable organizations, including churches and religious organizations, which qualify for exemption from federal income tax and generally are eligible to receive tax-deductible contributions. This section provides that an organization must be organized and operated exclusively for religious or other charitable purposes. Net earnings may not inure to the benefit of any private individual or shareholder. No substantial part of its activity may be attempting to influence legislation. The organization may not intervene in political campaigns, and the organization's purposes and activities may not be illegal or violate fundamental public policy. These requirements are set forth in greater detail throughout this publication. Okay, let me be clear. 501c3 is not a state of being. It is a section of the IRS code that deals with churches and charitable organizations. I met with one of the most accomplished, most respected, most well-written, most speaks at conferences, published nonprofit lawyers in the country who happens to be based here in Kansas City. And I said, we don't want to be a 501c3. He said, you are a 501c3. I said, no, we're not. We don't want to be. He said, you are. Every church is. That is the section of the IRS code that deals with churches. It's not a matter of you are or you aren't. That is the category of the IRS code under which all churches fall. If you want to be a corporation that has liability protection for its board and directors, that can protect its assets, that is essentially creating a separate person, a separate entity, and request special permission to be considered a church, then you go through the process, you pay your money, and the government gives you special permission to be considered a 501c3. Churches don't have to do that. There's no requirement to do that. A church is non-taxable constitutionally speaking. The IRS, okay, now let me get to the part where it says that in the page here. Okay. Okay, this is on page 3 of this document. Recognition of tax-exempt status. Automatic exemption for churches. Churches that meet the requirements of IRS Section 501c3 are automatically considered tax-exempt and are not required to apply for and obtain recognition of tax-exempt status from the IRS. Although there is no requirement to do so, many churches seek recognition of tax-exempt status from the IRS because such recognition assures church leaders, members, and contributors that the church is recognized as exempt and qualifies for related tax benefits. For example, contributors to a church that has been recognized as tax-exempt would know that their contributions generally are tax-deductible. Okay, so all they're saying is that if you pay the $800 and are formatted their way, which means a corporation, and you meet their requirements and you fill out their forms, then they will say, okay, we certify that this is a church, that is a tax-exempt organization. But now you have to file Form 990s, you have to report all your donors, you have to let them know all about your business. Where an unregistered church simply says, we meet the requirements, we're tax-exempt, we're non-taxable constitutionally, that's it. We have no reporting requirements, we don't have to let them know who our donors are, we don't have to let them know what our annual budget was or total receipts or anything like that. Now, I think that corporate recognition, special permission to be a 501c3 is simply a way for the government to get their fingers into your business. And I don't think they got any business being involved in the church or the finances of the church, period. So, we, along with many other congregations across the country, have made a conscious decision to not be a corporation that has requested special permission to be considered a 501c3. Since we already are one, we're already tax exempt, we already can give people a tax receipt if they request one, which most people don't. And there's no reason whatsoever to do that. Here's another little chunk right above what I just read. Churches and religious organizations, like many other charitable organizations, qualify for exemption from federal income tax under IRS Section 501c3 and are generally eligible to receive tax-deductible contributions. To qualify for tax-exempt status, such an organization must meet the following requirements, covered in greater detail throughout this publication. The organization must be organized and operated exclusively for religious, educational, scientific, or other charitable purposes. We are. Net earnings may not inure to the benefit of any private individual or shareholder. They don't. No substantial part of its activity may be attempting to influence legislation. We don't. The organization may not intervene in political campaigns. We don't. And the organization's purposes and activities may not be illegal or violate fundamental public policy. We don't. Okay, so there are those that say that pastors cannot, if you are a 501c3 corporation that has requested special permission that then you can't speak out against political candidates, you can't whatever. Well, technically, even an unregistered church isn't supposed to be doing that stuff either. You're going to take your chances either way. Now, there's basically three choices. There are those congregations, fellowships. They're not really churches. There is the church and all of that. But where's my phone? There are those that become a corporation for liability protection, have a board of directors, and become a registered, approved 501c3 organization, tax-exempt status given to what is essentially a business, looks like a business, smells like a business, acts like a business, but has requested permission to be considered a charitable organization. Then there are churches, unregistered churches, who say, I'm a church, I meet at least 8 of the 14 criteria of what a church ought to look like, which are listed in the document, and can give tax-exempt, tax receipts to people that want to donate. Then there are the ones that say, we're an unregistered church, and we want no business with the IRS at all. We don't care about tax donations at all. We don't think that you ought to be getting a discount on the money that you're giving to the church anyway. The Bible says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Okay? If Caesar wants to give you a tax break, that's Caesar's call. There's no reason why it's wrong to take Caesar up on that if he wants to give you a qualified minimum deduction or a charitable deduction or whatever like that. Caesar has made the decision that if you give to charity, they'll reduce it off your taxes. I don't think there's any biblical reason to not take Caesar up on that. Now, the thing is, you need to understand that if God says, give $1,000 to such and such a ministry, and you're going to get a tax receipt for it that is going to discount 30% off of that based on your tax bracket, could be 40, 50%, whatever. But let's say you give $1,000, you get $300 back in your taxes. Well, you only gave $700. So God may, you need to be clear with the Lord. Lord, is that $1,000 on the gross or the net? What is it you want me to give? And it could go either way. I'm not stating an opinion on that. I'm just saying, if you're going to, you work it out with the Lord. Now, in terms of this video, the main point is to clear up, you can't just go willy-nilly saying every 501c3 organization is of the devil and is under the state. It's not factually correct, okay? According to the IRS, every church, no matter how they're organized, whether they're a corporation that has requested special permission or they just are, and they've never registered with they have nothing to do with the IRS, even the ones that say, we don't want to give a tax donation to anybody, we don't whatever, the IRS would still look at them and say, you fit under Section 501c3 of the IRS code. This is the box you fit in. The fact that you're in the box doesn't necessarily mean you're a corporation that's a business that's requested special permission to be under there and has more reporting requirements and is more under the thumb of the government. Okay, I have a problem with that as a church. Now, one of the ministries that we help a lot with, Hope Outreach, makes no effort to be a church. They don't have Sunday school. They don't have regular meetings. He is a homeless ministry taking food down to the guys under the bridges. Okay, he fills out the paperwork, pays his $800, requests special permission to be a 501c3 charity, just like a youth baseball league or a scientific club or an autism support group or anything else would. And the government considers them a charity, and then they don't have to pay sales tax on things that they buy to give away, and so on. I got no problem with a parachurch organization seeking charitable status. I still think it's problematic because of all the reporting and how much the government's going to be in your business, but that's different than a church, than a congregation, which I don't believe should give its headship to the state. Now, I don't think you have to have a charitable status to go give peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to the guys under the bridges. Just go do it. Make some up at home, have your friends pitch in, and go make some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That Brian's ministry, peanut butter and jelly is the name of the ministry he wants to start. We'll get an old hotel or old retirement home donated to him and invite people to come be part of peanut butter and jelly time. And anyway, it would be good if we were just real careful with the language. Now, if you are part of a congregation that is a 501c3 corporation that has requested special permission, you need to understand that they have an obligation to tell the government who their major donors are and what they're doing with their money, what the salaries of everybody are, what the percentages of where the money's going, and everything else. They have, and that's public information. So anybody, the CIA, the FBI, anybody, Joe, average dude off the street, should be able to access that stuff. There are some organizations, like Benny Hinn, for example, who is set up as a church. In part, I think, because there's no reporting requirements, there's no public inspection of those numbers, and they can hide how much people are getting paid. So, and the government watches that stuff pretty carefully when it looks like there's exorbitant. One of the things is that it not inure to the benefit of any particular individual. That doesn't mean that people can't get paid a salary or whatever, but they can't be getting enriched off of the totality of the charity. Anyway, nonetheless, I am one that does not ever, under any circumstances, ever want to raise my hand and say, by the power vested in me by the state of Missouri. I am not an agent of the state. I do not want to be an agent of the state. I refuse to be used as a clerk or a recorder or whatever else of the state for their contracts or to report to them what God's church is doing in any way if I can avoid it. You want a marriage license? You find somebody else to marry you, because we're going to marry under God, not under the state of Missouri. I don't think the state of Missouri or the state of California or whoever has the authority to decide what is and what isn't holy matrimony. They can decide a civil union, they can decide who gets to be in the hospital room or who gets to pull the plug on you when you're dying or whatever, but I don't think they get a say in what is and what isn't holy matrimony under God. I don't think any of the founding fathers were married with a marriage license. They were married at home or in the church, and it was written in the family Bible, and that was good enough, and is still good enough in almost every state in the union. So that's a different topic. You can watch my videos about what's wrong with marriage licenses and who are you really married to, and the three-way contract with the state that you join yourself into when you do that. I think the same is true with 501c3 corporations that request special permission to be charitable organizations that are essentially a business, structured like a business, act like a business, under the Secretary of State, which is in charge of business in your state. I think there's a lot of problems with that. And I would far, far rather that congregations all over, especially city churches, just say, we're a church, leave us alone, don't bother me, and that's that. And the IRS says we have the right to do that. That they tax that constitutionally a church is non-taxable, period. It's not a special permission. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to fill out any paperwork. If you're a church, you're non-taxable. That's all there is to it. Anyway, if there's any questions, you can refer to the IRS publications. Should be pretty obvious. There's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding out there about it. I'm hoping that this clears things up a little bit. We don't typically give tax receipts to people unless they request it. So if you have donated money to the ministry and you want a tax receipt at the end of the year, you just need to send us an email and do that. But you don't really need anything from us anyway. You've got your return checks, you've got your PayPal statement or whatever else, and that's sufficient to do that. A lot of times, like disabled American veterans or some others have these containers where you put clothes out. It looks like an ATM machine or whatever out in the parking lots, and you just drop your clothes in there, and there'll be a little pad there where you tear off the pad and you put how many bags you donated, and you estimate the value yourself of what you donated. They're not in the estimating business. When somebody gives us a refrigerator, I give them a thing saying they donated a refrigerator, and they guess what the value is to them, and the IRS doesn't like it. That's on them. The IRS can work it out with them. The only time where it would ever arise is if somebody got audited and the IRS said, we don't think these donations are legit because we don't think the Church of Liberty is a real church. And then they would come and look, and we would show them what we're doing, that we meet all the criteria, and then say, okay, yeah, you're a church, it's fine, and pass it through. But where we might have that extra hurdle that somebody that had been a corporation that had got special permission wouldn't have that hurdle, although that special permission could be revoked at any time if the government decides that they're doing something they don't like. Where we have a constitutional right to being non-taxable regardless. So, anyway, all of this, none of this matters once the Antichrist takes over and they start persecuting Christians and stuff. Anyway, the last thing you're going to have to worry about is how many tax deductions you have. So, I'm not encouraging people to even think in these terms, but since it's an accusation that's been brought, and I want to clarify and straighten whatever out we can, and also inform people about what it means to be a 501c3. It is simply a section of the IRS code, and you need to be specific about the problem that you have. Are they a corporation that is a business that has requested to be a church, or are they a church? That's the difference. And how much does this one have the government's fingers up in its business? So, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Lots more at fellowshipofthemartyrs.com, libertydisasterrelief.com, and stay tuned for a complete revision of the Church of Liberty, the churchofliberty.com website coming soon. Thanks. Bye.